Hello and welcome to the news on Channel 51 for Monday, the 15th of September. And what a week we have just come out from. So much news to get through. But before we do, it's important now to just take a deep breath and understand what's actually going on at the moment. And can we, in fact, decipher what's going on at the moment? Now, you would think that after Charlie Kirk's murder and the capture of this character, Tyler, 22 years old, that we'd be close to the end, some form of closure. And what it has done for the mainstream around the world, at least the 80% of the masses, has shown that there has been a murder, a terrible fallout from what's going on. But of course, there is still more division. There is a genuine hatred coming out of the left, an absolute incitement of violence, a wish for more, and we're going to cover that today. And on the other side, there is the calling out of the violence and saying that enough is enough, and that the left are the party of murder. But within the freedom so-called movement, the resistance, or those that have had enough of government control, there is, of course, the usual rabbit holes, and there are always rabbit holes to go down. And in today, I'm going to present a couple of them for you. And we'll ask why, we'll think about it, and determine, can we ever get to a form of unity if there is always someone out there that's going to call it out? And it could be right or it can be wrong. But the only way we advance is if we get absolute consensus. And so without truth, real discovery, real justice, we're never going to get there. So is it a case of self-censorship? Is it a case of holding back one's own opinion? This is the art form of idealism versus politics once again. Now, I'd like to cover a lot of stuff from the rallies from yesterday, or from Saturday, but there isn't a whole lot to cover. There's controversy in Brisbane where Tricky, part of the People's Revolution, turned a lot of people away, presumably for asking for donations at the start of his speech, which is part of what was reported. There's a fabulous telephone conversation between Scott Challen, Shallow Chow, and Joel Jamal that he shared, and it's on TikTok. Goes for about 12 minutes, and it's hard to cut it up to get to the point of what we want to see here on this show to condense. And I'm sure if you want to find it, you'll find it out there. But there is the controversy of what's going on, and there were different outcomes in each of the different states. Scott reports there were good results in Adelaide. They said Sydney was quite good, but the numbers were far lower than we would have hoped for. And Melbourne, keep talking about it, a basket case with what's going on down there. So there are suggestions, etc. Now, Joel, of course, being part of Turning Point Australia, is right in the thick of it when it comes to his relationship indirectly with Charlie Kirk from Turning Point USA. But it's important. And so for today's show, we're going to cut now to an interview that Joel gave on Sky News with Freya in her show, talking about Charlie's passing and what it means. This on the eve of what we saw in the rallies in Australia, which are only the beginning because there'll be another one scheduled for mid-October. And hopefully the organisation can get their act together one way or another. But what it's showing us is, and what I've been observing for some time now, is that there is a jostling for people who want to just do the right thing and get involved and have a go, to the point where you then establish a genuine type of leadership. And in those early rallies, there was Christian Mack, who was doing some great work. Well, Mack's now had to walk away from this whole thing because of threats, etc., and he decided to move on. And so other names come up. Now, Scott Challen is doing an amazing job, absolutely fantastic. And he's keeping a cool head in a crisis. He's a self-employed entrepreneur, and at the same time, he's also ex-military. He speaks with great reason, and he's building a great following. So check that conversation out with Joel. Now, what's Tricky up to? And is he just missing the point? Or is he now so far entrenched in this system that doesn't seem to get traction, that the cost of running such an organisation means that he's trying to help get people to make contributions? So I'm not going to be critical of what Tricky's doing, but it's just easy there with the division. Now, there's another elephant in the room, and that elephant is organisations and rallies. So at the weekend, the first things that we were seeing was that a barbecue wasn't allowed to be brought into Sydney's Hyde Park. What was that about? Well, it's in relation to the Freedom Union and John Wilson in a protest organised by Aussie Cossack from inside the Russian consulate that they were going to bring in a barbecue and to feed protesters at the rally. It seems like a great idea. Only the police were having none of it, and they were caught on film dismantling scaffolding overnight, the night before, etc. But then there was this horrible story where we learnt that certain people were saying that they were threatened by Cossack, who has replied to say that, well, if you put up or shut up, why don't you make a police report if that was the case? Now, the problem is, again, is egos. And in Cossack's case, where there's smoke, there's fire. And maybe these people don't want to go down the pathway of completely blowing up a movement if these allegations were real. Now, I've heard from others as well, and I can even report some other uncomfortable conversations that I've had with certain people that indicate or at least hint that this type of behaviour can go on behind the scenes. So what's really going on? Have we been infiltrated? And who can we trust? So at the end of the day, without having to point fingers really anywhere or anyone and just raised out, it is a very important time now to take stock about where we are, what we're doing, and if we can even make any form of difference. Scott Challen said that he's been fighting the political movements for some time and has realised that he can't make any difference. It's a cultural one. It's very important. We've been through 2 election cycles now here in Australia in 2022 and 2025, and we're not getting very far. So how do we consolidate? One Nation's polling went up today to 12% as the Liberal Party slumped again after their defeat in the Kiama by-election, resulting in Gareth Ward, who was a Liberal, then an independent, who won and was returned after being charged on sexual assault, who is now sitting in Cessnock Correctional Centre waiting for his sentence on September 19. And Labor won that election. And you would expect there would be a turnaround, but the reality is Gareth Ward's the only one in that area that's been able to win for the Liberals and held the seat for some time, because it's always been a Labor seat, or primarily held by Labor. So again, different scenario. But it seems obvious now that Liberal Party support would go down when Jacinta Price, who was the architect of the biggest victory for the coalition in some time, 61-39 for The Voice, is the one that's demoted for her remarks, reporting on a Labor Party pollster telling with actual information that 85% of new Indian immigrants vote Labor. So you feel like the Liberal Party has to go through some navel-gazing process here as they promise that they're going to get better for the next election, but they've got a long way to go. And, of course, all support generally goes to One Nation. But there has to be another approach, and what's happening with these other particular parties. So we'll talk a bit more about that as the days go on. Let's now get into the show proper. Let's play this clip for you now from Sky News with Joel Jamal.
I have been flabbergasted by the level of evil and vitriol we've seen directed towards Charlie even hours after he was assassinated. What do you make of that reaction? Why are they so full of hate?
Freya, the idea that our debating opponents in the SPS debate are Hannah Ferguson, Abby Chatfield.
For context, Joel and I did a debate on the SBS before the last federal election where we went up against Hannah Ferguson and Abby Chatfield. So we're very used to dealing with these people.
The idea that we could have a civil debate and then a few months later, they're essentially, I don't want to say cheering on Charlie's death, but they're not sad. They're not sad. And the other thing is our other debating opponent, Punters Politics, Conrad, not a single post. At least Friendly Geordies, whatever you disagree with him on, at least he had the decency, maybe it's because he had an attack on his house, but at least he had the decency to say, What is wrong, America? Why is violence a part of your political discourse? This is not something we want to see in Australia. We're all shocked by it. And it's really strange for only you would really understand. They were our debating opponents in that SBS debate. It's actually quite shocking if you think about it.
And then the idea that if they would support the killing of Charlie Kirk, or at least not outright condemn it, if it were one of us that were in that situation, what would their response be? And once you get to that point, how can you sustain a democracy? How can you sustain Western civilization, which was built off the fact, I talked about this in my editorial, that we don't need violence to express our views. Now, Zali Steggall, the Teal MP, liked Hannah Ferguson's post where she said violence is sometimes justified. To see a mainstream Australian politician endorsing those views, are you despairing at where we are as a country?
Look, I think there's a lot of people that are showing us who they truly are. And I think it was Charlie who said, you can tell a lot from a person by how they react when someone dies. And I think, look, Zali, it was just a like on a post. It's in a different, it's stratospheric when it comes to Abby Chatfield talking about why hasn't anyone done it yet, alluding to going after Trump. Like, it does make you despair a little bit, being people that enjoy the battle of the ideas, but at the same time, this should be a wake-up call for people. If you don't engage in democracy, you cede the ground to these psychos that are out there, that are in our parliaments. So please engage in democracy, join a political party, join a church, and we've got to get back to the values that made Australia great in the first place.
Exactly. Well, where is Turning Point USA headed next? We saw defiant Erica Kirk make an address to the globe 48 hours after her husband was murdered. Now, I personally think we could see Erica running for president, and I would totally support that. Finally, we will get a Kirk presidency. But where do you think the movement is headed now?
Look, too soon to say about Erica. I think that, you know, and I mean, I think everyone feels this, including yourself. Like, we are so sorry for her losing a beautiful husband and the lovely children they have. I mean, what do you tell the children? I think moving ahead, Turning Point USA has solidified exactly what it's going to be doing. It is an organisation that is dedicated to helping people understand how the democracy works, breathe their values into politics. They're conservative, they're Christian, and they're about making our countries go back to our roots. And that's what I do. That's what the Turning Point UK guys do as well. And that's what's needed. And so I think that they're just getting started. Charlie's Instagram numbers just went from 1.7 million to 11.7 million people in the last 3 days. Our Facebook page has doubled from 100,000 to 200,000 in 2 days. There's very clearly something going on, and Charlie Kirk's death clearly was a turning point for the world.
Yeah, well, I think we saw the true face of evil that lies just below the surface of so many people, and now hopefully the revival begins.
We're going to go back a little bit historically now, well, at least a review of the last few days. Here is a clip from a left-wing activist, and this is what we are up against.
So I keep on seeing like posts about this Charlie dude, whatever, Kirk dude, whatever, regardless. And let me just say this. I'm surprised that y'all didn't get rid of him sooner. And I'm surprised that you guys aren't getting rid of more people. Like, don't stop with him. Don't let him be the end dog. Get rid of them all. And the ones that are above him. Your mayor. Your city councilman. What is it? Georgia Power? The people that keep on raising our shit? The CEO, get rid of them. Yeah. Like, what? It was so crazy. I watched like a 60 minute, whatever. Y'all know what I mean. 1 minute edit of like the things he said, and they're like so atrocious that like his wife deserves to go too. Y'all keep on talking about his wife and kids. They need to go too, because they're carrying on that mentality and that lineage. Like, get rid of the whole family. I'm so sorry. Why did you guys stop with him? Why did you stop with him? Go get his grandma. Because who raised you? Like, your mom ought to be ashamed for breathing scum like you. Get rid of the whole family. Like, y'all too scary. Y'all too scary for revolution. Y'all too scary for progress. Like, y'all want results without putting in the work. You gonna have to take out trash to get a clean house. Like, it is what it is. if the trash can is stinking up the house, you gotta take out the garbage. Take the garbage out, y'all. Take the garbage out. All right. Not me. I'm chilling.
Meanwhile, the hate goes on. Elon Musk posted, "We must fight back or be murdered." Insane LA teacher calls for the death of millions. Eric Travis, a teacher at Fairfax High School in LA, has openly called for more violence. Far-right have a target on their backs and deserve to be one down, millions to go. Question is, how is this allowed? Meanwhile, we now witness others, copycats, now trampling on memorials.
And we want to warn you, the next video is disturbing. A man trampled the memorial for Charlie Kirk at the Turning Point headquarters in Phoenix. This happened not too long ago. Our photog on the scene says the man kicked over flowers, vases, and balloons. He was taken to the ground by an onlooker and then arrested. And back here live, the suspect, the alleged assassin.
Now, by comparison, I want to play this clip from a young blogger with a Substack page, Jeffrey Mead. Take a look at how he describes and analyzes what's happened.
This is a time that all Americans should come together and feel and mourn what happened. Violence, which affects so many different people of so many different political persuasions, is an affliction of America. And coming together is what we ought to be doing, not pointing fingers of blame.
I didn't notice Chuck Schumer saying that when his entire party and the left was calling people on the right fascist and Nazis. By the way, Chuck Schumer's the minority leader in the Senate. So his side has been calling the right fascist and Nazis for years at this point. It's funny, now he wants to come together because someone internalized his party and his side's rhetoric and decided to go put a bullet through a prominent conservative's neck. Now he wants to come together. Let's seem like they're reasonable people. But he wasn't saying, hey, let's come together when his party and his people were saying stuff like this.
Let me ask you tonight, do you think Donald Trump is a fascist?
Yes, I do.
This is what kicking the shit out of fascism looks like. Try to prevent the spread of the lawlessness and the fascist chaos that's been unleashed against us.
So when we say Donald Trump is a fascist, fascism, a huge component of fascism is uniting racism, bigotry, a form of racist nationalism.
We are now living in a fascist dictatorship.
We are worried about potential rise of fascism in this country. We're worried about our democracy falling to an authoritarian and potentially fascist form of government.
Not only to roll over to Donald Trump's will, but to roll over our democracy and allow him to take over this country as a fascist dictator.
When fascism isn't just coming, it's already here.
The former chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Mark Milley, said, "No one has ever been more dangerous to this country than Donald Trump, and he is a fascist to his core."
Now let's take a look at the shooter's ideology. Let's see what he wrote on his bullet casings.
Inscriptions that had been engraved on casings found with the rifle. Inscriptions on a fired casing read, "Notices bulges, capital OWO, what's this question mark?" Inscriptions on the 3 unfired casings read, "Hey fascist, exclamation point, catch, exclamation point." Up arrow symbol, right arrow, and symbol, and 3 down arrow symbols. A second unfired casing read, "Oh Bella Chow, Bella Chow, Bella Chow, Chow Chow." And a third unfired casing read, "If you read this, you are gay."
Hey fascist, catch is what he wrote on the bullet. Oh, and Bella Ciao? I'm going to read you some quick history on it. It's a famous Italian folk song that originated in the late 19th century as a lament sung by female rice field workers in northern Italy's Po Valley. They were protesting their harsh working conditions. During World War II, it was adapted by the Italian partisans, anti-fascist resistance fighters opposing Benito Mussolini's fascist regime and the Nazi occupation. The song has since evolved into a global symbol of resistance against oppression and fascism, sung at protests worldwide. The shooter was radicalized by Democrats' rhetoric. Again, the Democrats weren't talking about coming together when they just spent the past years calling everyone on the right fascist. And now we're at the logical conclusion of their extremism. And now they want to say, oh, well, political violence isn't good. We should come together now. We don't want to point fingers. Yeah, you don't want to point fingers because you're responsible. The left's extreme rhetoric got Charlie Kirk killed. And I don't want to talk about, oh, this happens on both sides. Recently, it has not been happening on both sides. Name me a major figure on the left today that has national prominence that has been shot. I'm not talking about a state rep in Minnesota. Yes, that is horrible. But a state rep in Minnesota that essentially nobody knows is not the same as Donald Trump or Charlie Kirk's level of national recognition. So again, I say, name me the people on the left with high national recognition and very high influence that have been shot like Donald Trump and Charlie Kirk have. You can't, because it hasn't happened. The left is pushing extreme rhetoric, and people are dying as a result of it. And it's crazy because they still don't want to take accountability for what their extremist rhetoric is leading people to believe and do. Yes, this is currently a problem on the left. This is not, oh, well, both sides. No, that's not what's happening right now. This is on the left. Also, just a reminder, I have a free email newsletter where I give you morning updates and I go into more.
This was posted by Senator Babette. If you speak an objective truth that the radical left doesn't like, they'll murder you. That's not exaggeration, it's fact. If they can't silence you directly, they'll poison the atmosphere instead. They'll smear you as a Nazi, a fascist, a bigot, or a racist until some unhinged freak picks up a knife or a gun. At that point, the blood is on both hands. The one who picked up the weapon and the radical leftist who incited it. It's time we started holding the radical left accountable for the terror they inspire. All of them. They're all terrorists. Here now, we're going to hear from the Utah governor, Spencer Cox, and he's going to explain how Tyler Robinson has, in fact, not confessed and is not cooperating. With more developments here.
All we can confirm is that those conversations definitely were happening, and they did not believe it was actually him. It was all joking until he admitted that it actually was him.
And anything new on the investigation? You say he admitted that, confessed?
No, not again. He is not confessed to authorities. He is not cooperating. But all the people around him are cooperating, and I think that's very important. There were reports yesterday that we can confirm that his roommate was indeed a boyfriend who is transitioning from male to female. That's information that the FBI had mentioned yesterday. We can confirm that as well, and that he is cooperating with authorities as well.
This tweet from Benny Johnson just spoke with top FBI official who made it very clear that they have not ruled out co-conspirators in Charlie Kirk's assassination. That assumption is premature. This investigation is just beginning. An enormous amount of evidence has been seized, both digital and physical. FBI sources assure me the public will know everything about the dark internet history, chats and affiliations of Kirk's left-wing political assassin. The source then alluded to some online groups attempting to delete or destroy evidence. We have everything. We are focused on the radicalisation element. The truth will not be hidden or buried or classified. The public will know. Let's now hear from Eric Trump and his analysis.
This is transcending not only the youth generation, but also the older generations. This is a hit on our country. It's a hit on our movement. It's a hit on, Christianity. It's a hit on religion. It's a hit on freedom. It's emphasizes the dichotomy between, good and evil in this country. And they truly have awoken that sleeping giant, just not within the youth vote, but really transcending everybody who's in this nation. It's had such a profound effect on this nation. And seeing Erica on there, she was so unbelievably articulate, so unbelievably strong. This could have been the greatest mistake these people have ever made.
Meanwhile, over in the UK, these are pictures from the rallies held at the weekend. Substantial. Officially, they were meant to be between 100 and 150,000 people, whereas the others are saying it was in the millions, multi-millions of people out there in the streets. These pictures are truly extraordinary and are a great comparison to the unfortunate situation we had in Australia, where our protests were much, much smaller, the division still prevalent. Australia wasn't the only place in the world to have rallies at the weekend. The UK, well, it was literally unbelievable, the amount of people that got out over there. Let's now hear from Tommy Robinson and his thoughts on why it was so successful.
You're leading all of Britain right now. How do you feel, Charlie?
We're making history, mate. We're making history.
You're making history.
Britain is awake. Britain is alive. This ripple has come from the United States. None of this would have happened without Elon Musk or Donald Trump. We thank you, America, okay? We thank you. You've given us hope. Hope is contagious. Britain is rising, mate.
And are you guys just getting started?
This is the counter-revolution. There's been a globalist revolution for 20 years. We are the counter-revolution. It's not going anywhere, mate. Everyone's had enough.
And then you see how much violence there's on the left, with our friend Charlie Kirk getting murdered in cold blood this week, and people on the left celebrating it openly. The left is the party of murder and celebrating murder. I mean, let that sink in for a minute. That's who we're dealing with here. That is who we're dealing with.
Meanwhile, Mike Davis posted, after the killing of George Floyd, a serial criminal, Democrats burned, looted and murdered BLM. After the killing of Charlie Kirk, a Christian husband and father, Republicans prayed. I have two words for those in the media pretending Republicans are the violent ones. F you.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found. Was blind, but now I see.
We don't normally do this on Channel 51 News, and I haven't done this for a long time, since the days of joining TNT Radio and trying to work out how we consolidate. There are many people out there on social media, and there are conspiracy pages everywhere. But I just think that this one, sent to me today by friends, and I thought it was worth playing because it provides perspective on what Charlie Kirk was saying on the Patrick Bet-David show that is getting people to continually point the finger at Israel. Now, I'll say this. You can't call for the deaths or the taking out of anyone based on their race or religion. You can't hate on white people for being the cause of everything. I had to suspend someone from my Substack page today calling for white people to be taken out. Equally, you can't call for all Palestinian people to be taken out for the acts of Hamas, whether you want to argue that Hamas is the cause of October 7, as Charlie intimates in that clip that maybe someone was ordered to stand down, which was to flare it up. But that involves the intention of knowing that people, when given an advantage, would do what they did to those Israelis on that fateful day on October 7. It's also interesting when Trump says that that war wouldn't have happened in Ukraine if he was president. Might it still have happened October 7? Who knows?
Fact is now Bibi and the Israeli hard right government has a mandate. I gotta be careful the way I say this. They're gonna try to ethnically cleanse Gaza. Yep. I mean that's I don't use that term lightly. Okay, they're talking about basically removing 2.5 million people from there. Okay, and honestly, they have a mandate to go seek justice and revenge. They do. This idea that they need to have a truce or a peace treaty, that's morally crap after you see women and children be burned alive and dragged to the streets. But there are some serious questions here, Patrick. And let me tell you, my pattern recognition over the last 5 years has become pretty sharp. COVID, Maui fires, Epstein. When I see a story and it doesn't click, our guts are usually right. So I've been to Israel many times. The whole country's a fortress. When I first heard this story, I still have the same gut instinct that I did initially. I find this very hard to believe. I've been to that Gaza border. You cannot go 10 feet without running into a 19-year-old with an AR-15 or an automatic machine gun that's an IDF soldier. right? The whole country is surveilled. And so let me just kind of go through this. We don't talk about Israeli politics very often, and most Americans don't know this. The last 9 months, Israel was on the brink of civil war. It's not an exaggeration. This judicial stuff, there were hundreds of thousands of Israelis taking to the streets because Bibi Netanyahu was basically redefining the Israeli constitution. That's not an exaggeration, right? He said the judicial branch has too much power. There were protests planned this week against Netanyahu, where they anticipated tens of thousands of people to take to the streets. That's all gone, Patrick. Netanyahu now has an emergency government and a mandate to lead. I'm not willing to go so far that saying that Netanyahu knew or there was intelligence here, but I think some questions need to be asked. Was there a stand down order? Was there a stand down order? 6 hours? I don't believe it. Israel's the size of New Jersey. When I took a helicopter ride from Jerusalem to the Gaza border, it's 45 minutes. Wow. 6 hours. They're live streaming the killing of Jews. Did somebody in the government say stand down? That is a legitimate, non-conspiracy question. The whole country is the IDF. The whole country is. Yeah. And you're trying to tell me that they're going to concerts and kibbutzes and schools and by reports 6 hours. Let's say it's 3 hours.
That's suspect. Go ahead, Rob. It's also not like a right-wing reporting. This is from the New York Times. The long wait for help as massacre unfolds in Israel.
9
I can't think of a more liberal news outlet than the New York Times.
And by the way, I'm actually very pro-Israel. So let me be very, so I'm not exactly.
I think we all are.
No, I just want to make sure my position is clear here. But so Patrick, there are other explanations. It's possible that the Netanyahu government was double-crossed by bad agents. Okay? That's dark, but it's not as dark as what we're talking about.
He suggested that Mossad may have allowed the attack to happen deliberately to give Netanyahu a blank check for his ethnic cleansing campaign. That's not something you say without making enemies in Tel Aviv.
And then we go further down the rabbit hole. Here is something posted by a fellow called Scott Brunswick that's been getting shared around the traps. We just got some info that blew our minds. A law enforcement with inside knowledge says Charlie's assassination was faked at the highest levels. There were credible threats against him and his family. They got proactive and faked his death. The whole family is going into witness protection. We are working to confirm, but it seems plausible. This whole thing seemed too planned, even the investigation. Quick wrap. Since when do all the pieces in an investigation fall into place so quickly? Regardless of what's going on in Israel, can we call for the death of all Jewish people because of Israel's behaviour and their apparent heavy-handedness, which is what people are calling for, saying that there's a genocide in Palestine as a rearguard action to defence? Well, we know that there are Jewish people on both sides of the political fence, left-wing and right-wing. Here, for example, one of the most famous Jewish people in the world, also a capo, George Soros, literally calling out Donald Trump. So, which side of the fence are we on here?
President Trump is a con man and the ultimate narcissist who wants the world to revolve around him. When his fantasy of becoming president came true, his narcissism developed a pathological dimension.
We just saw Jewish Chuck Schumer earlier with his remarks calling for calm and being called out by Jeffrey Mead. So it's complicated. Now, if we call for the end of Zionism, we're calling for the end of the state of Israel. Is that going to happen? Is the one Jewish state amidst dozens of Muslim states going to be taken out? One the size of New Jersey, for example, against others, massive countries just the same? Or is Israel going to be sanctioned off and no one's going to be able to get in or out? Could that be a possibility? Or will there be another result here? Or will the country be renamed Palestine and just left to fend for itself? Is that going to achieve peace? So all of us are confused and we can't get to the bottom of what's really going on. And we sometimes have to hope that maybe, just maybe, Q was right, saving Israel for last, but we don't have the punchline. We don't know what that means. And so that's why we seem to be so confused. Here now, we're going to play a clip from the Pakistani envoy at the United Nations calling out Israel and its behavior, which was ahead of the result that was voting some 142 to 10 for the creation of a Palestinian state. That although, as we showed on this show last week, John Howard says they can't do for failing at the 4 levels. So is expediency the course of action here? Or is it something else?
I'm obliged to take the floor to respond to some comments. The representative of Israel perhaps did not listen attentively to all council members and other speakers in today's debate. And in our view, it is unacceptable, indeed ludicrous, for an aggressor, an occupier, a serial violator of UN Charter and international law, that is Israel, to abuse this chamber and disrespect the sanctity of this council. And this is not the first time. And by pointing fingers on others, baseless assertions primarily aimed at masking its own illegal actions and violations of international law. President, but that's not at all surprising. It is an occupier that does not listen to anyone, that does not pay heed to any advice, even from its friends, if there are any left, that refutes, and not just refutes, it threatens members of the international community, international media, international human rights and humanitarian organizations. Doesn't listen to the ICJ or the ICC. It threatens the UN and its senior officials. And it does that with impunity, shielded by its apologists, who time and again acquiesce in its illegal actions and defiance of the international community. And like all occupiers, despite being the aggressor, it feigns and plays the victim. But today it is totally exposed. President, this council has spent decades discussing the situation in the Middle East and the Palestinian question. Meeting after meeting, we devote hours to this agenda. It is not because of anyone else. It is because of Israel that refuses to vacate its illegal occupation, and that blatantly violates the resolutions of this council. It's because of that we have these discussions. Israel also chose to refer to an unrelated incident and make misleading remarks regarding Pakistan in an effort to justify its own illegal actions and violations of international law. Pakistan's position on that incident has been clearly stated and is publicly available. The international community is well aware of Pakistan's frontline role and sacrifices in the international community's fight against terrorism. The entire world, including our partners, acknowledge that Al-Qaeda was largely decimated due to Pakistan's counterterrorism efforts. And we remain committed in this global, collective endeavor. We cannot accept insinuations from an irresponsible rogue state that is, in fact, the perpetrator of worst kind of state terrorism that we are witnessing in Gaza and, in fact, in the occupied Palestinian territories for decades. And we reject any false analogy, as has also been done by Gaddafi. For whatever way it interprets the statements in this council, the occupying power must go back and read carefully the statement issued by the Security Council today.
Or do we just have to go along to think that this is going to work, but will it bring peace? That's the question. It seems we just don't know. Turmoil everywhere, but we will continue to watch. We will continue to report, see if we can get to the bottom of it. But like you, I am confused, and we can only continue to keep going and hoping something is going to sort itself out here. Leadership seems to be failing us all around the world, but at the same time, it will be leadership that gets us out of this mess. So who are the leaders to lead us out, and who are the leaders that are failing us? Meanwhile, with the drone attacks or drones flying over Poland, presumably from Russia, as has been alleged, others are coming out and telling us that there is a false flag attack from Zelensky capturing said drones. Meanwhile, President Trump has come out and sent this letter to all NATO nations and the world. I am ready to do major sanctions on Russia when all NATO nations have agreed and started to do the same thing, and when all NATO nations stop buying oil from Russia. As you know, NATO's commitment to win has been far less than 100%, and the purchase of Russian oil by some has been shocking. It greatly weakens your negotiating position and bargaining power over Russia. Anyway, I'm ready to go when you are. Just say when. I believe that this, plus NATO as a group placing 50% to 100% tariffs on China to be fully withdrawn after the war with Russia and Ukraine is ended, will also be of great help in ending this deadly but ridiculous war. China has a strong control and even grip over Russia, and these powerful tariffs will break that grip. This is not Trump's war. It never would have started if I was president. It is Biden's and Zelensky's war. I'm only here to help stop it and save thousands of Russian and Ukrainian lives. 7,118 lives lost last week alone. Crazy. If NATO does as I say, the war will end quickly. All of those lives will be saved. If not, you are just wasting my time and the time, energy and money of the United States. Thank you for your attention to this matter. Donald J. Trump, President of the United States of America. Meanwhile, Charlie's funeral details have been released Sunday, the 21st of September at 11 a.m. It's unusual that to have a funeral on a Sunday. Wonder who else resurrected on a Sunday. Wouldn't that be something for the books? Well, that concludes today's difficult news for Channel 51. I hope that you have got something out of it and that you continue to keep calm in a crisis as we continue to watch what is going on around the world, and hoping that one day at least we will be able to get the answers and that we can get past this unbelievable time in human history where we are at war like you wouldn't believe. It seems that we truly are in a civil war in the West, around the world, at a time when our leaders just don't want to serve us. Thanks everyone for watching.